I've always believed that the most important love stories aren't the ones we live with others, but the ones we painfully learn to write for ourselves. Mine began the day the keys to the cafe, the literary haven, were placed in my hand. They were cold, heavy, and made a lonely, metallic sound in my palm. A sound very similar to the echo of his voice, months earlier, saying the sentence that became the foundation for everything that followed. This is the story of how one man's attempt to erase me from his world led me to build an entire world for myself. It's not about revenge. It never was. It's about what happens when a woman decides to stop being a supporting character and resolves to be the author of her own story. If you believe in the power of rewriting your own story, please like this video so we can explore more of these transformative tales together. It all started like a literary glitch. Me, Sophia, a lover of books with a secret notebook of poems. He, Daniel, the kind of charismatic man who seems to have stepped out of the pages of a novel with a smile that promised entire chapters of happiness. Our setting was the literary haven, an old cafe that smelled of strong coffee and aged paper. The walls were lined with books from floor to ceiling, and there was a worn leather armchair in the corner, which he called his throne. I loved that place. But today I realize I loved it because I loved the version of myself that existed there. The woman who looked at him with admiration, the silent audience for his stories told loudly to friends. I confused being included on his stage with belonging in the play. I would curl up on the opposite sofa, a book in my lap, and believe that proximity was intimacy. Today, I know it was just convenience. He liked how my quiet presence magnified him, how my devoted gaze validated his importance. And I, with the hunger for love that so many of us carry, fed on those crumbs of attention as if they were a feast. The first signs that our book was destined for a tragic ending didn't come in grand plot twists, but in footnotes I chose to ignore. It was the little things. One afternoon at the Haven, I excitedly read him a piece of a poem I had written the night before. He listened, smiled that disarming smile, and said in front of a friend, with a mocking tone, "That's cute, my little poetess." The friend laughed. I felt my face burn, but I forced a smile. I put my notebook away and never opened it in front of him again. I told myself it was a joke, that men are just like that. I was teaching myself to accept the unacceptable, a dangerous lesson many of us learn too early. The turning point came a few months later. I had created a small business plan for an online shop for artisanal notebooks. It was the seed of a dream, something that was just mine. I showed it to him, my heart pounding with hope, expecting the same enthusiasm I dedicated to his promotions. At work, he flipped through the papers with an air of boredom. "Sophia, this is adorable, but you have no idea how the real world works. I make good money. You don't need to worry about this. Let me take care of us." It wasn't protection. It was him marking his territory. He was saying, "Your place is here, in my shadow, safe and small." Intuition doesn't scream, it whispers, and we spend our lives trying to drown out that whisper with the noise of our hope, the near discovery, the moment when reality knocks on the door and we pretend not to be home. Happened on a Tuesday night. He came home late, smelling of a woman's perfume that wasn't mine. I felt a knot in my stomach. While he was in the shower, his phone, left on the nightstand, lit up with a message. "Tonight was amazing. Can't wait for the next one." The name was a female colleague from his work. My body went cold. For a moment, the world became a high-pitched hum. I picked up the phone. My hands were shaking so much I could barely hold it. He came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, and saw me standing there, paralyzed. Before I could say a word, he smiled with a terrifying calmness. "Love, what's wrong? You look pale." He took the phone from my hand, glanced at the screen, and laughed. "Oh, Carla, we were closing a project with the team. She's super intense. Messages everyone. You're tired, my love. You're imagining things." He hugged me, and I, desperate to believe the lie because the truth was too painful, let myself be hugged. That night, I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling, feeling my intuition writhing inside me, calling me a fool. Stories like this remind us that we're not alone in our battles. If you want to keep hearing tales of transformation and courage, Subscribe now and join our community. The end didn't come with a shout, but with a verdict. It happened weeks later, on a rainy night. The fight started over something silly. I had enrolled in a creative writing course. A small step for me, but for him, an act of rebellion. He didn't yell. His cruelty was more sophisticated. He looked at me with a cold disappointment, as if I were a stubborn child. I don't understand this need of yours to prove something, Sophia. Isn't what I offer you enough? My voice came out trembling, but for the first time, it was firm. This isn't about you, Daniel. This is about me. It's about having something that's mine. He stared at me for a long moment. The sound of the rain outside seemed to stop. And then, he delivered the sentence with a cutting clarity that broke something fundamental inside me. Yours? Nothing here is yours, Sophia. Not even this apartment. I gave you a comfortable life. I gave you a place in my world. And you think you can have something of your own. He took a step toward me, his face a mask of contempt. You need to understand something fundamental about yourself. You are. He paused, savoring the word before releasing it. You're replaceable. Completely replaceable. If you walk out that door, tomorrow I'll find another woman to sit in your spot, to laugh at my jokes, to admire me. There are thousands of Sophias out there, but there's only one Daniel. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I have ever heard. There was nothing left to say. Trauma is not what happens to you, but what happens inside of you. In that instant, the image I had of us shattered, and in the midst of the shards, for the first time, I saw myself, alone, but whole. The first few days after I left were a blur of pain. I didn't leave with a grand plan. I left with a suitcase, my notebook of poems, and my wounded dignity. I stayed at a friend's house, processing the grief. Not grief for him, but grief for the woman I had been, the one who believed love meant disappearing into someone else. It was a productive grief. I walked for hours aimlessly, letting the city heal me, and it was on one of those walks that fate, or perhaps my own soul, guided me. I passed by the literary haven. There was a sign in the window, a simple wooden sign with a single hand-painted phrase, "For sale." I stopped. The world seemed to snap into focus. The idea was born not as a flash of revenge, but as a silent epiphany. What if I built a haven for myself, in the exact place where I had felt the most homeless? That idea became my secret obsession. I unearthed the business plan he had ridiculed. I used a small savings my grandmother had left me, money I kept for an emergency that he didn't even know existed. I applied for a bank loan, using my passion and my calculations as collateral. Every step was a silent act of defiance. Every spreadsheet filled out, every phone call made, every sleepless night. Researching coffee suppliers was me telling the universe and myself, I am not replaceable. I am the entire investment. Brené Brown teaches that vulnerability is the birthplace of courage. By admitting to myself that I was broken, I found the strength to rebuild myself, not for him to see, but for me to live in. He moved on with his life, probably with a new audience for his shows. He had no idea I wasn't just turning the page. I was buying the publishing house. The grand reopening was on an autumn Saturday. The cafe was unrecognizable. I named it My Place. The dark walls had given way to a warm cream color. Where there once were dusty books, there was now a curated selection of female authors and independent poets. My own poems, framed with a delicate calligraphy, adorned the main wall. And his throne, the old leather armchair, was gone. In its place stood two identical, comfortable armchairs, side by side, with a small table between them. An invitation to conversation, not adoration. I was behind the counter, cleaning a cup, when the bell on the door chimed. It was him. Time seemed to freeze. He walked in, looked around, his face a blank canvas of confusion. His eyes scanned the room, the decor, my poems on the wall, and finally, they landed on me. His jaw dropped. That air of superiority, the armor he wore so well, simply dissolved. He walked to the counter like a ghost. Sophia, what is this? His voice was a whisper. I looked at him, not with anger, not with triumph, but with a peace I had never felt in his presence. I smiled, a genuine smile. It's my place, Daniel, but the haven. How? He stammered, his eyes darting around, trying to understand. I placed the cup on the counter and looked him straight in the eye. I discovered I wasn't replaceable. I was just being undervalued. Welcome. I turned to help a customer who had just arrived, leaving him there, standing in the middle of my world. That was the true final word. I didn't need to shout. My existence, my creation, my silent success, it all spoke for me. He stood for a few moments more, a displaced spectator on my stage, and then he left. The bell on the door chimed softly, like a sigh of relief. Today, my place is a success. It's a meeting point for women who write, who dream, who read. It's a safe space. Buying this calf was never about Daniel. It was about proving to myself that I could turn the deepest pain into purpose. And on this journey, I've learned a few lessons. The first is that when someone defines you, they are only revealing their own limits, not yours. The second is that your intuition is your most loyal business partner. Learn to listen to its proposals. And the third and most important is that self-love isn't a destination. It's a practice. It's the daily decision to treat yourself with the respect you used to beg from others. Building your refuge isn't about putting up walls, but about tearing down the cages we allowed others to build around us. It's about reclaiming your space in the world. The journey to rebuild yourself is unique for everyone. It's a work of art, made of tears, courage, and small acts of rebellion. If you have ever turned pain into power, if you have built something beautiful on the ruins of a disappointment, comment below. I built my refuge. And don't leave without subscribing so we can continue on this journey of finding our own voice together.